The youngest child of legendary filmmaker Francis Ford Coppola, Sofia Coppola was born a kind of royalty into a community that gave her a lot to live up to artistically. But from her debut film, Coppola carved out a style and a way of looking at the world that is entirely her own. The inverse of her father's epics, like The Godfather and Apocalypse Now, her films are intimate in scale. They follow characters suspended, in moments of transition. They're muted in color and filmed in natural light. We wander through her lonely dreamscapes, guided by sound. She's a true indie filmmaker who opts for creative freedom over a big budget. As Coppola herself once said, "I don't make the kind of movies that lend themselves to wide releases."
And I'm also interested in characters and transition and how people can be motivated to change, not from some big outside disaster or being held hostage, but just kind of some little moment in life. It doesn't sound like a big deal. I feel like in life, those are the things that make you look at yourself or change.
I am so into you, baby.
You know you're watching a Sofia Coppola film if it follows a protagonist who's typically female and at a turning point in life. The story isn't driven by plot, but by themes, often of loneliness, teen culture, burgeoning femininity, and stilted ambition. You learn about a character's emotional state through visuals as opposed to dialogue. It's shot on film, except for Bling Ring, which was shot on digital. It has her signature follow shot that pulls the viewer into the story, whether it's filmed on a handheld camera or on a dolly. It's characterized by ambient sound and a documentary sensibility. Colors feel muted or pastel, thanks to the natural light creating low contrast in the image. All of these elements establishing immediately a Sofia Coppola mood. Sofia was born in New York City in 1971, the only daughter of Francis Ford Coppola and artist and filmmaker Eleanor Coppola. Her first entry into the film world was as an actor. She played Michael Corleone's godchild at the baptism in her father's iconic The Godfather. She also had a small role in Part 2 as an immigrant child and a key role as the daughter of Michael Corleone in Part 3.
You don't have to do this to me, please.
Famously, her performance wasn't very well received by the critics. At 15, she interned for Chanel in Paris. Her ongoing flair for fashion has made her something of a style icon. Her friend Marc Jacobs has called her his muse. And her attention to detail translates into her film's costume design. Looking at these period clothes from The Beguiled or Marie Antoinette, we can almost imagine them in a spread in Vogue. At 18, Coppola worked with her father to write the screenplay for the short Life Without Zoe, 1/3 of the anthology film New York Stories. In the 90s, she enrolled at CalArts for painting, but transferred to the Art Center College of Design to study photography. Her formal training as a photographer shows in her deep understanding of visual storytelling. We never learn about her characters' emotional states through what they say. We learn through cinematography and sound design, through a character's stance, the color of her light, and most importantly, the way she's framed. Here, the distant shot from above in which Lux appears tiny and awkwardly near the edge of the picture represents her abandonment and vulnerability, how small she feels waking up alone after homecoming. Here, Johnny apathetically floats out of the frame, reflecting his loneliness despite the glamorous backdrop. And like in a photograph, Coppola leaves room for viewers to project their own feelings onto the image. Having grown up on movie sets, Coppola was exposed to international art house films from a young age. Her father introduced her to the French New Wave and Italian neorealism. Some of her favorites include Godard's Breathless, Kubrick's Lolita, Hughes's 16 Candles, Francis Ford Coppola's Rumblefish, and Peter Bogdanovich's The Last Picture Show. She also cites visual art and music as key sources for inspiration, and even plants visual references to artists within her work. Coppola's debut feature, The Virgin Suicides, premiered at Sundance in 2000, putting the director on the art house or indie map. Based on Jeffrey Eugenides' 1993 novel, the story is set in 1970s suburban Detroit, and like the book, it's told from the perspective of boys who are entranced by the isolated Lisbon sisters. Coppola and her director of photography, Edward Lachman, depict this point of view through shaky follow shots through windows, and other views that communicate the boys and the audiences yearning to access this untouchable girl world.
Do you like to wrestle?
The outsider looking in perspective is a theme and visual approach that would continue to permeate her films. The movie introduced the world to Coppola's romantic visual style. The Virgin Suicides aesthetic took after Terrence Malick's 1973 Badlands, Bill Owen's photographic book Suburbia, and photographer William Eggleston's dye transfer photos from the 1970s. Like The Virgin Suicides, Coppola's second feature, Lost in Translation, focuses on the perspectives of emotionally imprisoned protagonists. The title, Lost in Translation, on the surface references the comic difficulty the characters experience communicating via interpreters, notes, and technological means.
Is that everything? I mean, it seemed like you said quite a bit more than that.
On a deeper level, it represents the chasms that have formed in their personal relationships, suspending them in this shared depressive limbo. Before Bob and Charlotte meet, they're shown drowning among unfamiliar crowds or occupying the edge of the frame alone. But when the characters are shown together and they're content, the composition is truly at balance. Coppola utilizes silence throughout the film to increase the weight of the visuals and also to perpetuate the theme of those moments in which meaning is lost in translation. Lost in Translation was nominated for 4 Academy Awards in 2003, and Coppola won for Best Original Screenplay, solidifying her status as a powerhouse filmmaker early in her career. We meet another female protagonist in flux in Marie Antoinette, Coppola's off-kilter biopic that was booed at Cannes at its 2006 premiere. One of the most interesting aspects of this movie is the way Coppola sprinkles in anachronisms, like Converse high tops and songs by The Strokes in 1770s Versailles. This stylistic form of presentism, applying present-day ideas to the distant past, sends a bold message that this movie isn't actually about 18th century France. It's about a teenage girl, then, today, or anytime, and her stories told through the symbolic material of Antoinette's life, loosely and liberally interpreted. She's a girl out of her depth, whose mind is focused on typical young girl things like boys, clothes, and fun, while her circumstances demand a lot more maturity from her.
Yours is not usually permitted at court performances.
Why not? It was wonderful.
We can empathize with Antoinette not as a historical figure flattened into a textbook, but as a prematurely sexualized and disoriented teen. Matching its content, the film's aesthetic is far more over-the-top than Coppola's typically understated visual style. Yet amidst the lavish costumes, sets, and desserts, in the framing and the mise-en-scène, we're still seeing Coppola's refined and neatly composed eye. And the film showcases her inclination for fashion. 4-time Oscar-winning costume designer Milena Canonero used a box of Ladurée macaroons Coppola brought her as a color palette, and they got Manolo Blahnik to design the shoes. Again, the period is a jumping-off point, less important than thematic expression. The clothes symbolically mirror Antoinette's personal transformation from an innocent child to an extravagant party girl, to a mother, and finally to a political prisoner. We might even interpret the film as a defense of the appeal of superficial beauty. As an aesthete and lover of many arts, Coppola is sympathetic to those who love or fall for beauty, even if that beauty ultimately turns out to be shallow.
When are you coming back?
Whereas many of Coppola's films explore female questions, 2010's Somewhere follows a male protagonist, Stephen Dorff's Johnny, a depressed Hollywood actor who sleepwalks through his glamorous, boring days and lonely, promiscuous nights. We open with a 2-minute sequence in which Johnny drives his black Ferrari in circles on a desert track, passing in and out of the frame. The quiet opening shot anticipates the slow-burning journey to come. The minimalism, real-time feel, and playfulness of Somewhere make us think of French New Wave films, like Cleo from 5 to 7, and the name of Johnny's daughter, Cleo, may be a reference to that Agnes Varda film.
Harris Savides, a cinematographer, showed me the Chantal Ackerman movie, Jean Dalman, and so I just thought it was so cool that you could watch someone just being alone in this kind of real time and not be bored. It was kind of fascinating to be alone with someone.
In her signature style, Coppola renders Johnny's emotional states through composition and sound design. Take, for example, 2 nearly identical scenes in which a pair of twin strippers give a private performance for Johnny. The repetition and the subtle differences in how he responds signal his current mood, as well as the absurdity and emptiness of his routine, all with the most minimalist of shot choices, a wide from his point of view of the strippers and a reverse shot of Johnny. The restraint of the minimalist minimalism actually heightens the humor and the sadness. When Johnny feels alone, it shows in the frame. When he's spending time with his daughter Cleo, the composition is more at balance, and the frame has motion, vibrancy, or warmth. The joy of the film lies in the moments Cleo and Johnny spend together, and almost all of these are wordless or use words only as additional texture. It's a story told in minute visual choices, mood, and subtle story details, like the eggs Benedict that Cleo makes for her father.
This is so good. Yeah, it's really good, Cleo. You got the sauce perfect. It's like not too heavy.
Wanna ride? The inspiration for 2013's The Bling Ring came from a Vanity Fair article, The Suspects Wore Louboutins. The film's based on the true crime story of a group of celebrity-obsessed teens who burglarized homes of the likes of Paris Hilton and Orlando Bloom, making out with over $3 million in clothing, cash, and jewelry. A fun fact, Paris Hilton actually makes a cameo in the movie. Coppola has said that she studied the social media profiles of her lead actors for visual reference. The end result was a collage of digital images with a documentary feel. Countless handheld shots mimicking the selfies and granular Skype videos that dominate the lives of the main characters. And again, like Marie Antoinette but in a different way, Bling Ring has sequences that feel like music videos, visually and musically capturing the feeling that her characters are chasing, and emphasizing the way that to these young people the promises of riches and fame feel impossibly cool and glamorous. The Bling Ring is Coppola's only film shot on digital to date. She decided to try it out based on a recommendation from cinematographer Harris Savides, who passed away from brain cancer during post-production. Together, they composed one of the film's most memorable shots, the teens breaking into a glass house in the Hollywood Hills from the perspective of an abandoned house across the street. This is another instance of composition as metaphor. From here, the people look like Barbies wandering around a dollhouse. The image plays on the film's materialistic motif, and the idea that for these characters, grand larceny is child's play. Coppola and Savides crafted a symbolic visual world for the fame-hungry Bling Ring to inhabit, a dull suburb by day and a glittering pop art playground by night. The Bling Ring, Marie Antoinette, and the Virgin Suicides share a common interest in illuminating the inner lives of misunderstood teenagers, tragically shaped by society.
No way.
I think I'm hearing you.
Look who's here, everybody!
In 2015, Coppola got together with Netflix for A Very Murray Christmas. The melancholic musical comedy, which features an impressive cast of celebrities, is an homage to old Hollywood-themed variety shows. While it seems to be a one-off or a departure, A Very Murray Christmas bears traces of Coppola's personality: a crowd of famous relatives and friends, a beautifully lonely rendering of New York City, and comedic moments that might make you feel a little miserable.
Why the sadness? Gotta move on. When there should be gladness. Keep moving on. All you can do is keep moving on.
Coppola made history at Cannes 2017 when she became the second woman ever, and the first American woman, to take home the Best Director award for The Beguiled, an adaptation of a Southern Gothic novel by Thomas P. Cullinan, which was also made into a 1971 film starring Clint Eastwood. The story shows what happens when a wounded Union soldier shows up at an all-girls boarding school in rural Mississippi. The Beguiled explores a theme reminiscent of the Virgin Suicides, group dynamics, particularly among women. When Nicole Kidman's Miss Martha remarks,
"It seems the enemy is not what we believe."
This speaks to the film's exploration of relationships between the sexes and how the presence of a man can immediately change how women behave together. In keeping with the Southern Gothic tradition, the tight, self-contained story unravels in what feels at moments like a horror movie.
My tendency is to be on the subtle side, so kind of push myself to be a little more, there's more dialogue and a little more kind of, I don't know, Colin was teasing me that it's like, oh, this is an action movie to you, because I'm like, there's guns and a stuntman and blood. And
He seems to be a sensitive person. Does he?
Apart from her stylistic influence, one of the ways Coppola has been most influential in cinema is in her example as a prominent woman in film with a distinctive style and the freedom to make the film she wants to make. And while she's repeatedly demonstrated her capabilities, Coppola still faces criticism that dismisses her stylized visuals as hollow or her subjects as frivolous. But gaining critical respect in the film industry shouldn't require championing male themes. Coppola herself is often described as being soft-spoken yet in control on set, and this translates into her films. They may be quiet and soft-spoken themselves, but we can feel the firm directorial hand at work in every scene.
She really puts together good energies of people and cast members, I think, and so it naturally kind of, her vision so easily comes to life, in my opinion, and she doesn't second-guess herself.
If Coppola's films thus far are any indication, we know she'll continue to tell stories that embrace female points of view, use aesthetic means to tell stories of what's happening beneath the surface, and shed light on the interior lives of people in transition. And she'll tell them the way that she wants.